The Democratic National Committee is set to announce today the lineups for 2 nights of 2020 primary debates later this month. Yesterday, the DNC revealed the 20 candidates who had qualified by reaching fundraising or polling benchmarks. 10 contenders will take the stage over 2 nights on June 26th and 27th in Miami.
4 declared candidates did not qualify for the debate stage. Steve Bullock, Mike Gravel, Wayne Messam, and Seth Moulton failed to qualify. Earlier on CBSN AM, Caitlin Huey-Burns explained what's at stake when the committee decides which candidates will take the stage together.
Right. That's going to be what to look for today when they announce what the actual lineup is going to be, because it really matters, because there are going to be 10 candidates each night. And what I'm watching for is who is paired up with Joe Biden, because that's kind of how these campaigns are trying to strategize right now. Figure out, should I take on the perceived frontrunner, the guy who's leading in the polls, or should I try to use this limited time that I have to make my own case? And then if you're on a night that Joe Biden isn't in the race, do you bring him up, or do you focus on or capitalize on the fact that he's not on the stage with you? But I would stress that this is a totally different dynamic than anything we've seen before. 2 nights of debates, all of these candidates, there's very little time. I was actually just in Iowa with Joe Biden, and he said, look, this is going to be a lightning round more than a debate. Every candidate has, limited time to make their case.
Yeah, did he say something like a minute?
Exactly. Yeah. And, I asked him if he was doing anything differently to prepare for this one. And he said, no, I'm not going to focus on the other candidates, whether for or against. I'm focused on making my case. So we'll see if the others follow his lead.
So then what are the major issues do you expect that are probably going to dominate the 2 debates?
Well, I can say from polling and from what I've seen in the early states on the ground, what people are most interested in is the economy, climate change is a really big issue, and healthcare. Those, I would say, are kind of the top 3. But most importantly, I think a lot of voters, potential voters watching this, at least from what they've told us in our reporting, is that they're looking at to find a candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. And they're going to use this debate stage to kind of imagine whoever their candidate is going head to head with Donald Trump on the debate stage. So using this as a preview is kind of how they're starting to look at it.
I imagine this is going to be challenging for these candidates, though, because a lot of them actually have, there's a lot of similarities in their platforms. And if you have such a limited time to explain, what you're sort of behind, I don't know how you can also explain how you're different than all these other people.
That's completely right, and that's a really good point, that there aren't really many differences among all of these candidates when it comes to policy. So I think you're going to see a lot of focus on rhetoric, on kind of just overall presentation, and trying to show voters that, look, I'm tough enough, I have, whatever it takes to take on the eventual opponent. And I think that's kind of how they're trying to use their time. But you're right, it's really difficult to really get into policy given the time constraints and the number of candidates, but also given that there isn't really much of a difference.
Right. Okay, so one of the candidates is Julian Castro. He is also one of the candidates who has chosen to do a town hall on Fox News, right? He was asked there last night about, or he rather declined to criticize some of the other opponents. We want to play some of that sound.
You say you want to talk only about what you believe, but obviously you have to make a name for yourself on the debate stage. Is Joe Biden's back and forth on the Hyde Amendment an issue for you?
We're not on the debate stage yet.
No, we're on the town hall stage.
I think what folks want to know is where we stand on the issues, and people are going to get a clear sense of the contrast that exists. But I have just found that, especially now, the #1 priority for voters is to understand what each of us believe as they try and sort this out. And so I don't want to distract right now by talking about other candidates when the fact is that I need to introduce myself to a lot of people who don't know who I am yet.
Okay, so there had been concern with sort of the large number of candidates that they would just start sort of scratching at each other, and whoever ended up sort of on top was going to be so battle scarred that they'd sort of stumble into the broader competition, right? But he's refusing to criticize the other candidates, and perhaps the other candidates are going to take that strategy as well. Is that a winning strategy, though, considering the political environment that we're in?
Right, particularly for Julian Castro, who still, even though he was a popular or rising star in the party and served in the Obama administration, he still needs to introduce himself to voters. As he mentioned there, a lot of people still don't know him. But we got a really interesting preview about like 2 ways to go about this from Julian Castro and Beto O'Rourke this week. Happen to be 2 Texans. Julian Castro is saying that he wants to spend his time introducing himself. Beto O'Rourke, in an interview yesterday, said, went after Joe Biden and said that the country needs a generational change, and Joe Biden is essentially, paraphrasing here, a thing of the past. And so that seemed to be a little preview of what we're going to see. All of these candidates who are polling lower need to break through. They need a moment. And so whether they use that moment to go after Biden, whether they use that moment to go after Trump, or whether they use that moment to try to boost themselves kind of organically, those are some options that they can explore.